In a remote village surrounded by dense, ancient woods, there stood a solitary scarecrow in the center of a vast, overgrown field. It had been there for generations, woven from straw and tattered cloth. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light under the full moon. The villagers spoke of it in whispers, warning their children to stay away from the forest at night, especially during the harvest moon, when the scarecrow was said to come to life. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting its silver glow over the landscape, the air thickened with an ominous chill. The woods creaked and moaned, their branches swaying like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The villagers, tucked safely in their homes, closed their shutters tight, their hearts racing with the stories that haunted them. They knew what lurked in the darkness, the ancient magic that bound the scarecrow to the land. On the night of the harvest moon, a young man named Elias, restless and defiant, wandered toward the forest. He had always been fascinated by the tales, dismissing them as mere superstition. The thrill of adventure pulsed through him as he stepped onto the overgrown path that led to the heart of the woods. The moonlight danced on the leaves above, illuminating his way as he approached the scarecrow. As he drew near, a strange energy filled the air, crackling like electricity. The scarecrow stood silent, its straw body still, but its glowing eyes glinted with a hunger that sent shivers down Elias's spine. He felt an unsettling pull, a whisper that beckoned him closer. Ignoring the instinctual dread gnawing at his mind, he stepped into the clearing. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a gust of wind howled through the trees, shaking the branches violently. The scarecrow's body shifted, and with an unnatural creak, it began to move. The straw that formed its limbs rustled like dry leaves, and the hollow eyes glowed brighter, illuminating the clearing in a ghastly light. Elias stood frozen in terror as the scarecrow turned its head slowly, locking eyes with him. In that instant, something primal awoke in the scarecrow. It lunged forward, its straw fingers curling into claws, and Elias stumbled backward, his heart racing. He turned and ran, plunging into the dark woods, branches clawing at his skin as he fled for his life. Behind him, the scarecrow gave chase, its movements unnaturally swift, almost gliding over the ground. Elias darted through the trees, gasping for breath, desperate to escape the living nightmare. He could hear the rustle of straw and the low, menacing creaks of the scarecrow drawing nearer. Panic surged through him, and he stumbled over roots and fallen branches, determined to reach the safety of the village. But the woods were a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways he had never known. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting haunting shadows that danced around him. Just when he thought he saw a way out, he found himself back in the clearing, the scarecrow standing ominously in the center, waiting. Elias's mind raced. He needed to think, to escape. He grabbed a broken branch from the ground, swinging it at the scarecrow, but it passed right through its form, as if the creature were nothing but an illusion. The scarecrow tilted its head, seemingly amused, and then lunged at him once more. Elias felt the sharp claws of the scarecrow tear into his flesh, pain radiating through him as he fell to the ground. He rolled onto his back, gasping, and saw the scarecrow towering over him, its eyes burning with a malevolent glow. In a final act of desperation, he scrambled to his feet and bolted into the trees again, blood trailing behind him, marking his passage. As he ran deeper into the woods, he stumbled across an old, abandoned cabin, its door hanging off its hinges. Without a moment's hesitation, he dashed inside, slamming the door shut behind him. The interior was dark, the air thick with the scent of mold and decay. He pressed his back against the door, his heart pounding as he heard the faint rustle of straw approaching. He scanned the room, searching for anything that could help him. The cabin was bare, except for a few broken pieces of furniture and a dusty lantern sitting on a rickety table. He grabbed the lantern, desperately searching for a source of light. With trembling hands, he struck a match, illuminating the room with a flickering flame. The light danced across the walls, and for a moment, he felt a flicker of hope. But then, he heard it, the unmistakable sound of straw crunching outside. The Scarecrow was near, circling the cabin like a predator stalking its prey. Elias could feel the dread wash over him, his thoughts racing. He needed to find a way to defend himself. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the air as the Scarecrow burst through the door, its body towering and twisted, straw spilling from its frame. The lantern's flame flickered wildly in the sudden draft, and Elias stumbled back, fear paralyzing him. The Scarecrow lunged, and in that split second, he swung the lantern with all his might, the flame igniting the dried straw of the creature. The Scarecrow erupted in flames, the heat roaring as it writhed in agony. Elias watched in horror as the creature twisted and turned, the flames consuming its body, illuminating the cabin in a hellish glow. But the horror didn't end there. The Scarecrow let out a chilling, silent scream, its glowing eyes flickering in the inferno, and then, to his shock, it began to reform, straw knitting itself back together even as it burned. Realizing that he had only delayed the inevitable, Elias turned and fled from the cabin. The forest loomed before him, dark and uninviting, but it was his only chance. As he dashed through the trees, the firelight flickered behind him, illuminating the night in a fiery glow. The Scarecrow pursued relentlessly, the flames no longer a hindrance but a source of newfound rage. With each step, the forest seemed to close in around him, branches reaching out like skeletal hands, clawing at his flesh. The Scarecrow was relentless, its form shifting in and out of the shadows as it drew closer. The moon hung high above, casting an eerie glow over the twisted landscape, a silent witness to the nightmare unfolding below. Elias stumbled into a clearing, panting and desperate. He saw the remnants of the Scarecrow's previous victims, clothes torn and scattered, bones bleached by the moonlight. Terror gripped him. He was not the first, and he would not be the last. As he stood there, paralyzed by fear, the Scarecrow emerged from the shadows, its form now more monstrous, the flames still licking at its straw body. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, Elias turned to run again, but it was too late. The Scarecrow lunged at him with terrifying speed, claws outstretched. It pinned him to the ground, and he felt the sharpness of the straw digging into his skin. The last thing he saw was the glowing eyes, filled with an insatiable hunger, before darkness enveloped him. The moon hung high in the sky, casting its silvery light over the clearing. As the night wore on, the Scarecrow stood vigil over the remnants of its prey, a silent guardian of the forest. With the first light of dawn, the Scarecrow returned to its post in the field, becoming a mere statue once more, waiting patiently for the next harvest moon. In the village, whispers of the lost young man filled the air, but the townsfolk had grown accustomed to the tales of the Scarecrow. They shut their windows tightly, locking their doors, and promised to keep their children away from the woods. But on the night of the full moon, when shadows danced and the wind howled, the Scarecrow would awaken again, ready to claim its next victim, forever bound to the ancient curse that governed the land.